Welcome! We're here to answer a question. Do domestic markets hold the key to eliminate deforestation from agro-supply chains? We're going to discuss the lessons learned from the implementation and setup of the zero deforestation agreements that Colombia and Peru have signed to reduce commodity-driven deforestation in palm oil, beef, dairy, cocoa, and coffee sectors. We have a very special panel today. Let me introduce you. Nicolás Galarza, Vice Minister of the Environment of Colombia, Fabiola Muñoz, Coordinator of the Peruvian Coalition for Sustainable Production, Carlos Chinchilla, Sustainability Director for Aceites y Palma Aceite S.A., Camila Cortés, Sustainability Director for Extractora Sur del Casanare, Joel Brownen, Country Manager de Solidaridad Colombia, Maria Goretti, Palm Oil Manager for Solidaridad Colombia, and Javier Ortiz from Tropical Forest Alliance. Javier, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Nancy. How are you?
I'm good. I have a question. Why domestic markets matter in tropical forest countries?
Sure, thank you for the question, but first let me ask a question to our audience, a few questions. You can see a QR code that you can scan in your screen. The first of these questions is, what would you say is the average percentage of internal consumption in Colombia and Peru for these three commodities: beef, dairy, and palm oil? The second question is, are domestic markets key to eliminate deforestation from agro supply chains? Please answer this. You have 1 minute. Let's see the results for the first question. Now, let's see the results for the second question. Well, after reviewing the answers to these questions, let's review some information about Colombia and Peru related with deforestation, domestic markets, and production of the main crops. Deforestation in Colombia accounts for about 200,000 hectares a year as an average for the last 10 years. Almost 60% of this deforestation happens in the Amazon region and is driven mostly by illegal mining, the production of illegal crops, cattle production, and other crops. In Colombia, we have about 28 million cattle that are produced in 34 million hectares. This sector produces about 26% of the total emissions of the agricultural sector. Beef production in Colombia is of closely to 605,000 tons a year, of which about 90% or more are consumed in the domestic market, and only 25,000 tons are exported each year. Dairy production in Colombia is of about 7,358,000 liters a year, and over 95% of this production is locally consumed by the domestic market, which means that exports are really marginal and imports are increasing. In the palm oil sector in Colombia, we have about 560,000 hectares with 1.5 million tons of oil produced each year. Almost 54% of this production stays for domestic consumption, which means we only export 46% of the total production. Palm oil is not really a sector that is responsible for deforestation. In a recent study made by the Monitor Institution in Colombia, IDEAM, only 4,455 hectares were deforested from the period 2011 to 2017, which is about 0.4% of the total deforestation in the country. Now, let's check some numbers for Peru. Deforestation in Peru has been of about 150,000 hectares a year, but in 2020, it increased to about 200,000 hectares. It happens mostly in the Amazon region, linked to the production of illegal crops, to illegal mining, and to the production of palm oil, coffee, cocoa, and cattle. Cattle production is of about 9 million animals in total in the country, in 18 million hectares of pastures, accounting for 35.5% of the total emissions of the agricultural sector. In palm oil production, Peru occupies an area of about 77,000 hectares, with 300,000 tons produced each year. 90% of this production stays for domestic consumption. We have no available data on the responsibility of deforestation from the palm oil sector. So as we can see from this data, local demand or local consumption is very important in terms of achieving results in reducing deforestation from commodity production.
Okay, so for Colombia and Peru, we have found that the zero deforestation agreements are the mechanism to commit the whole sector. So let's see how to set up these agreements. We have two experts with us today. We have Fabiola Muñoz from Peru. She was a former Minister of Agriculture and Environment, and now she coordinates the Coalition for Sustainable Production. Peru just signed first agreement in the cocoa sector. Now is in the process for the palm oil sector agreement. I would like to ask Fabiola, what would be a practical recommendation to get all the actors involved in these voluntary agreements?
Hello, Nancy. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes, we have an agreement, and it's really a good opportunity to work together with all the actors. It's a deforestation in my country, Peru. It's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. And it's so difficult because in the country, the deforestation that we have is not the large scale. We have some samples of this, but the principal problem is the small scale, less than 5 hectares in different kind of products. And one of the challenges that we have is to organize the production, good practices, and work together with the different levels in the government, the national, the regional, and local government, and with the people. And for us, it's really important to work inside in our markets because, for example, cacao, it's a product for export. It's really important. A lot of families are involved in that, but we export that product. But in the case of oil palm, it's or palm oil, the market it's locally. 100% of the market it's local. For that reason, it's important to work not only in the relation of the market between the countries. It's really important to work with the producers and the governments. And the only way to do that is working together. Dialogue, it's the most important thing. And this is the idea that the coalition for a sustainable production that will lead with a lot of different institutions working together, public and private sector. It's the only way to confront this challenge because climate change is not a problem or deforestation is not a problem only for the Minister of Environment. It's the Minister of Economy, Production, all together we need to work.
Thank you, Fabiola, and good luck with the palm oil agreement. Now we have Dr. Galarza from the Minister of Environment in Colombia. I would like to ask Dr. Galarza, how has the Colombian government engaged in accomplishing these 5 agreements?
I'm very pleased to join you in this important event to share Colombia's experience in the implementation of zero deforestation agreements. We're strongly committed to fighting climate change. Colombia is a hotspot for biodiversity. In fact, the second most biodiverse country by square kilometer in the world. Although we're not major emitters of greenhouse gases, we're highly vulnerable to climate change since it is putting our biodiversity and food security at risk. In fact, we rank 33rd globally in climate change vulnerability. Deforestation is one of the biggest environmental challenges in Colombia and has one of the biggest shares in the country's greenhouse inventory with 33%, in stark contrast with the world's average 11%. Zero deforestation agreements encourage sustainability practices within the follow sector, which has one of the biggest shares in global greenhouse gases inventory with 24%. Our main goal is to achieve zero deforestation by 2030. Right now, we're putting this commitment on a congressional bill. To achieve this purpose, the zero deforestation agreements are one of the key strategies to achieve it. Furthermore, these agreements allow us to add value to national goods, such as meat, coffee, cocoa, palm, and dairy products, within international markets and through sustainable systems. Also, they promote greater engagement and participation between NGOs, international cooperation agencies, and international organizations.
Okay, now I would like to know what will be the main lesson learned from this process.
President Duque's goal was to sign and implement 5 zero deforestation agreements before the year 2022. As of today, I can say that we reached that goal when we signed the 5th zero deforestation agreement with the coffee sector in August this year. In sum, we have grouped more than 90 companies in the palm, cocoa, dairy, meat, value chains that committed achieving zero deforestation through the promotion of the sustainable practices of their production processes. I would like to highlight 2 of these processes. The agreement with the palm sector convenes more than 40 palm oil companies, which represent over 37% of the market. In the coming years, it is likely to become the first 100 deforestation-free sector in the economy of Colombia. Other agreements I would like to mention is the one with the meat sector, which is one of the first in Colombia to provide traceability across the value chain. I want to especially thank the Tropical Forest Alliance and Solidaridad for being our main partners in the important fight against deforestation. Through the implementation of these instruments, we're not only reducing deforestation, but we also ensure consumers reduce their footprint, and as a nation, we conserve our forest, biodiversity, and natural capital. Thank you.
I would like to say thanks to all of our guests. And now I have a final question for you, Javier. And what will be the steps to implement an agreement?
Well, be able to establish an agreement, there's about 8 different steps that we have seen in common with all 5 agreements we have signed in Colombia and the agreements, the first agreement that we have signed in Peru. The first of these steps is to have a real commitment from the country, especially from the government, which usually is pushed forward by the Ministries of Environment and Agriculture, supported by different other stakeholders. In the case of Colombia, the joint declaration of intent was the agreement between Colombia, the UK, Norway, and Germany, which gave the basis for the establishment of the zero deforestation agreements. The second step is to prioritize the value chains we are working with. In Colombia, we prioritized first 4 value chains: cattle, beef and dairy, then palm oil, and then wood. Nevertheless, the 4th agreement was not wood, but cocoa. And the 5th one that was prioritized was coffee, that was recently signed. The third step is having a deeper understanding of the key actors of each of these value chains and understanding better the value chain itself. To go to the 4th step, which is bringing together these key actors in discussions and forums to start discussing among us the proposals and the commitments from each of the sectors with these zero deforestation agreements. With this, then we can go to the 5th step, which is the elaboration of the text of the agreement, which has specific commitments for each of these sectors or actors, stakeholders in the value chain and the government and other stakeholders. The 6th step is going ahead with the launch event of the zero deforestation agreements with all the signatories. After this, then we start the implementation of the agreement, which is the 2nd step that starts with choosing a technical secretariat and the working groups and leads for these working groups inside the agreement, and defining a governance protocol. And finally, the last step is to go ahead with the implementation, which we're going to speak about later in giving an example of the palm oil agreement.
Okay, so the next part will be the implementation, right?
Yes, thank you, Nancy.
Okay, thank you to you, Javier. And now we're going to see a short video because the first agreement that was signed in Colombia was the palm oil agreement. So we have Maria Goretti today with us. She's going to explain how has been the challenges and the next steps for this agreement. But first, I want to invite you to see this short video.
The Agreement of Wheels for Zero Deforestation in the Palm Oil Chain in Colombia is advancing in its 4th year of implementation. Colombia was the first country in the world to sign a sector agreement to end deforestation in the palm oil supply chain. To ensure that the palm is produced sustainably while respecting natural forests and other strategic ecosystems, it is necessary to follow up on the commitments and recommendations contained in the agreement. To achieve this, it has had a rotating technical secretariat which, from its signing in 2017 to 2021, has been carried out by 3 organizations. In addition, during these years, a governance structure has been consolidated, characterized by a collaborative approach, where adherents have contributed with their capacities and strengths to the achievement of the goals set. As a collective action, the agreement has been working both in its strengthening as an instance and in the development of tools such as protocols and guidelines to promote palm development without the loss of forests or the impact of strategic ecosystems. The results of the operation show a growth close to 50% in the number of members, an increase in territorial representation, and a plurality of members of various natures. In 2021, highlights are the adhesion of commercial groups, agro-industrial companies, and not governmental organizations, and full territorial representation. The adopted guidelines have eased the concretion of actions aimed at the maintenance and recovery of forests, such as establishment of a sustainability path, traceability and chain of custody manual, planning of new plantings and new lots with full standards compliance, field verification of plantations, geographical location of suppliers, use of tools such as Global Forest Watch and geomatics to survey the polygons of fresh fruit bunches providers, multi-temporal analysis for coverage change, conservation of strategic ecosystems, reforestation plans, incorporation of RSPO and ISCC criteria, high conservation value areas identification, considering existing international certification tools, IDEAM's forest and carbon monitoring system, the information system of Fede Palma and Senipalma, among others, it is possible to affirm that the joint work of this agreement will demonstrate that the production and supply chain of the signatory companies will be free from deforestation of natural forests within a set period. This has been possible thanks to the collaborative work and synergy with which the CDA has operated. Increase the signatories of the agreement. Seek that the entire supply chain of palm oil and its derivatives in the country be free from deforestation. Make Colombian palm oil differentiate itself in the international market as a socially responsible and environmentally friendly product. Although there are still challenges to be met, the Colombian palm oil chain is committed to zero deforestation and social and environmental responsibility.
Thank you, Nancy, for the introduction. After the video, I would like to share with you the main insights of the Zero Deforestation Agreement for the palm oil supply chain. In 2017, Colombia was the first producer country to sign a Zero Deforestation Agreement for the palm oil supply chain. It was an historic agreement negotiated between the Tropical Forest Alliance, the national government, Fede Palma, Senipalma, and companies in the sector. This agreement outlines the following implementation steps, and Solidaridad, as the technical secretariat, monitors the implementation to ensure that they are fulfilled. 1. Identify the baseline associated with oil palm plantations in the country. 2. Carry out an analysis of the Colombian supply chain for each signatory company in order to identify the exposure to the focus areas of deforestation, and also it considers an analysis of the imported oil. 3 is to determine some quantitative corporate goals with an aspirational indication of when 100% of the supply chain coverage will be reached. And 4, we need to establish a transparent information and reporting system on compliance with the agreement. Regarding the first step, we already have the available information on the deforestation associated with palm oil between 2011 and 2017 made by IDEAM, and represents 0.2% of the total production area in Colombia. Now it is in the process of updating for the following years. At the same time, with the members of the agreement, we have grouped of support panels for the agro-industrial companies in order to guide the self-analysis process. By 2021, 31 palm oil companies have compiled data from their own supply chains, georeferencing their own plantations and those of the third parties. The next step is to determine the exposure of their production to the focus areas of deforestation that were identified by IDEAM during the baseline. This self-analysis process represents the information from around 2,500 properties in a total area of more than 140,000 hectares that are distributed throughout 45 municipalities in the country. After 4 years since this agreement was signed by more than 60 organizations, what have we learned from the implementation and what result have we achieved so far? I would like to invite Carlos Chinchilla, Sustainability Director of Aceites S.A. and Palmaceite S.A. Carlos, it is nice to see you. I hope you are well. I would like to ask you, why are Aceites S.A. and Palmaceite S.A. part of the Zero Deforestation Agreement for the palm oil supply chain?
Hola María Goretti, ¿cómo has estado? Claro que sí, pero lo primero es como dar un poco de contexto, porque por allá en el año 2015 hasta finales de 2018 participamos del proyecto de paisaje palmero biodiverso de la Federación, en la cual se nos dieron muchas herramientas para este tipo de manejos. Y estando el señor Javier Ortiz como coordinador del proyecto, nos invitó a ser parte del Acuerdo Cero Deforestación. Vimos para Aceites y Palmaceite una gran oportunidad de manejar el tema y de hacer pues parte de esta gran iniciativa. En el año 2018 creo que firmamos entre 18 y 21 plantas extractoras, además de todas las empresas estatales como el IDEAM, el Ministerio de Desarrollo, si no estoy mal, y otras empresas. El ministro fue quien acompañó la actividad y que de alguna manera le dio un poco más de peso al tema. Pero recordar que Aceites y Palmaceite son compañías agroindustriales que están totalmente comprometidas con todo el tema de la conservación del medio ambiente y que de alguna manera queremos manejar alternativas para mitigar y poder garantizar la continuidad de los sistemas en un largo tiempo. Esto es una actividad de largo aliento y que de alguna forma nuestro objetivo es tratar de hacer algún tipo de coexistencia entre esas zonas que manejamos con palma y la biodiversidad, que adicional por procesos de certificación en compensaciones, hoy tenemos alrededor de unas 230 hectáreas de bosque seco tropical que nosotros tenemos en conservación a unos 25 años y que terminados esos 25 años tenemos la iniciativa de hacer esto como parte de las reservas privadas y que podamos tener ahí, no sé, algún reducto muy específico y muy especial de manejar no solo esta zona, sino otras zonas en conservación que también manejamos en los núcleos.
Thank you, Carlos. And now I would like to know what are the results that you have achieved and what challenges are you facing for the implementation of this agreement?
Okay, los avances han sido significativos a raíz de estos 4 años que llevamos certificados en RCPO y en ISCC. Estas manejan sus propias herramientas. Hay una herramienta que también sirve de mucho apoyo que se llama Global Forest Watch, que nos da mucho monitoreo en tiempo real de nuestro núcleo de las fincas y que nos dice exactamente qué puede estar sucediendo. Además que la RCPO, cada X cantidad de tiempo, si hay una alerta de incendio, siempre nos están notificando y nosotros tenemos ese compromiso de ir a verificar. Porque es parte de lo que nosotros hacemos rutinariamente. Además, hemos ejecutado métodos para monitorear y controlar los riesgos frente a posibles incendios, que creo que es uno de los problemas hoy del tema de la deforestación en todas las áreas o coberturas naturales que nosotros manejamos. Utilizamos entonces algunas metodologías como el Core Inland Cover, que también tiene un capítulo especial para Colombia, asimismo de interpretación de imágenes Landsat, e incluso utilizar Google Earth, que también nos ayuda mucho como mecanismo para poder monitorear, como les decía, todas estas actividades. Y que mensualmente, a través del Global Forest Watch, nosotros también tenemos informes de todos los seguimientos que se hacen en el núcleo, en cada una de las fincas que están georreferenciadas, asimismo en las plantas extractoras. Adicional, también hemos incluido en nuestro sistema de cumplimiento las políticas de cero deforestación y no quema, es decir, que nos estamos comprometiendo todo el tiempo a que no exista este tipo de situaciones. Entonces, un objetivo que se cumple y que tenemos unas prohibiciones que tenemos muy claras y que la gente también se sensibiliza a decir no talo en ninguna parte, no puedo tener algún tipo de intervención que pueda poner en riesgo coberturas tan importantes que hoy son reductos o que nosotros manejamos. Retos de lo que nosotros manejamos, para mí muchas veces las juntas directivas que necesitan un poco más de tiempo para sensibilizarse y para hacer actividades, porque muchas veces te dicen tumba, tumba, tumba y no se dan cuenta que están afectando ciertas coberturas. Entonces creo que con ello fue una de las principales necesidades. A veces también sentimos como una necesidad el tema de los pequeños productores porque no cuentan con la tecnología o con ciertos conocimientos para manejar este tipo de situaciones, pero como Departamento de Sostenibilidad también nos apoyamos. Y un dato más, yo recuerdo que hace algún tiempo, cuando teníamos coberturas en fincas, la gente por estar cazando solamente utilizaba el fuego, y puedo decir que eran foráneos, que eran externos a las plantaciones, pero que salían a cazar algunas especies que se manejan dentro de estas coberturas, iguanas, ponche, chigüiros, este tipo de animales, y que de alguna forma empezamos a sensibilizar, hoy se volvieron como una especie de guardaparques. También nos utilizamos, en el buen sentido de la palabra, a los niños, que hoy se encargan de darle un poco, de jalarle las orejas a los papás y decirles que no hagan eso. Entonces los procesos de sensibilización con los niños también nos han dado muy buenos resultados. Eso considero que han sido los retos parte de los retos que hemos manejado hasta el momento. María, mil gracias por invitarnos a este tipo de eventos. Ojalá que no sea el primero ni el último y que como compañía de aceites y palmaceites estamos prestos para lo que tú necesites. Gracias y un gran abrazo.
Okay, Carlos, thank you very much for your intervention. It was very interesting to understand the result and challenges of Aceites S.A. and Palmaceite S.A. We really appreciate your time. Now, I would like to invite our second guest. She is Camila Cortés, Sustainability Director of Extractora del Sur del Casanare. Thank you, Camila, for being here. Welcome.
Hola María, muchas gracias por la invitación.
I would like to ask you, Camila, why is Extractora del Sur del Casanare an active member of the Zero Deforestation Agreement?
Bueno, nosotros desde Extractora Sur de Casanare nos encontramos desde la fase de concertación del Acuerdo Cero Deforestación y muy alineados a nuestros valores centrales y nuestra ideología central, consideramos importante ser parte de este acuerdo.
Okay, thank you, Camila. Very interesting. And I also wonder what are the results that you have achieved so far and the challenges that you are facing during the implementation.
Bueno, nosotros actualmente nos encontramos en la fase de que ya tenemos toda nuestra información levantada. Ya realizamos el levantamiento de la información de toda nuestra cadena de suministro y actualmente pues, nos encontramos a la espera de realizar el autoanálisis con la información que ya tenemos levantada. Dentro de los retos que vemos o dentro de los cuellos de botella que vemos que se han presentado durante el desarrollo del Acuerdo Cero de Deforestación, consideramos importante destacar, pues, por ejemplo, que hubo un retraso en la entrega de la línea base del IDEAM por parte del IDEAM. Entonces, esto lo que nos ha hecho es que nos ha corrido el cronograma de implementación del acuerdo, por lo menos, más o menos de un año. No tenemos claridad en el mapa presentado por el IDEAM cómo debemos cruzar la información nuestra por la escala que se están presentando los mapas, y tampoco hay una claridad clara de cuáles van a ser los incentivos para los adherentes al acuerdo. Consideramos que deberíamos tener claro cuáles son los incentivos de parte del gobierno y de parte también de la comercialización del producto final dentro del Acuerdo Cero de Deforestación. Esto es lo que nosotros vemos que podrían llegar a ser como los desafíos que tenemos para el desarrollo del acuerdo.
Thank you, Camila, for sharing your thoughts during this event. Definitely, this agreement reflects the commitment of the palm oil sector to demonstrate that producing sustainable palm oil in Colombia is possible free of deforestation. The next steps to overcome the challenges are mainly expanding the scope to all the palm oil companies in the country, including the smallholders. We also need to design some incentives to conserve the strategic ecosystem. It is also important to get satellite information more often than every year. And last but not least, to establish an interinstitutional support network for surveillance in the rural areas. For sure, the collaborative work will continue to be the key for these efforts and to demonstrate that the Colombian supply chain is free of deforestation.
Thank you, Maria, for all this useful information. Now, to conclude, we have Joel Browning with us, and now I would like to ask again, do domestic markets hold the key to stop deforestation in supply chains?
Well, thank you, Nancy, for this question. I think today we have learned about the context in tropical forest countries. We have learned about the setup of zero deforestation agreements in supply chains. We have heard about the experiences of different companies. My takeaway from what we have seen in the past years in domestic markets in tropical forest countries is that they play a crucial role in tackling this issue. Now, maybe to highlight that, focus on three different takeaways. The first one is demand. The second one is monitoring and traceability. The third one is finance.
Okay, can you explain further?
Yeah, of course. If we look, for example, at demand, there's demand for international demand for deforestation-free products. But we run the risk that if we don't work on demand in domestic markets for deforestation-free products, we run the risk that non-compliant production is being absorbed in these local markets. So there it's important to work together with these domestic companies, but also with governments in tropical forest countries to create demand for deforestation-free products and to help support them in expanding that segment of the market. The second is traceability and monitoring. If we look at monitoring of different supply chains that are at risk of being linked to deforestation, then it's important that we have good monitoring systems in place and traceability schemes. And what we've seen so far is that, especially with indirect suppliers, they pose a major risk, especially for international companies, of having, let's say, a link with deforestation. So if we want to basically bridge the gap between what is currently available in data of different supply chains, then we have to work as well with domestic market players as well, so that they also can complement that data to have, let's say, a full picture of what's going on, let's say, in these tropical forest countries. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is finance. There are currently a lot of finance schemes at global scale to avoid that companies are being linked to deforestation. And I think that should also be complemented to, let's say, finance schemes in domestic markets. So what I'm talking about is banks, local banks in these tropical forest countries that also have the capacity to monitor their portfolio of financial products if there is any link to deforestation. And this way we narrow down the risks that are associated with supply chains such as livestock, palm oil, with deforestation. So overall, I think domestic markets play a crucial role if we want to stop deforestation in the coming decade or decades. I think there's much work to be done in that respect.
Okay, thank you very much. With this, we finish. This is the lessons we have learned in Colombia and Peru. We hope you find it useful. And this is all for today. Thank you very much for being here, and we hope to see you soon.